It's really nice to be here. I'm Jon Yates. I'm the Chief Executive of the Youth Endowment Fund, which is a weird organisation. It's a charity born with an endowment from the government, basically a cheque of money. Why? To try and get really clear about what works to keep all of our children safe. I'm so delighted to be thinking and spending time with you championing youth work. And being here today, I don't know what you think of when you think about youth work. I think of Sandra, Tim and Al, who were my youth workers when I was a young person. And I suspect a lot of us, just if you can think of, if you've got a similar person in your mind, just raise your hand. Like lots of us will think of particular people. And I think about what was it that made them so special to me. And it was sometimes that they gave me good advice. It was sometimes that they were quite funny. And it was a lot of the time that they were secretly organising stuff I didn't notice. But more than anything, it was that they were always there for me. And that's what made the difference. Those are three people who I like very much. These are three statistics I don't like very much. They're 50, 500, 1 in 2. Every year, 50 children lose their lives because of being attacked by a knife or a sharp object. 500. Every year, 500 children end up in hospital for the same reason. 1 in 2. Every year, 1 in 2 teenage children say that they've changed their behaviour in some way because they're afraid of violence. 1 in 2. I think often we think that violence is something that affects other people's children. It doesn't. It affects all of our children. 1 in 2 teenage children saying they've changed their behaviour in some way. And I think it's really hard to hear those statistics without saying, well, what do we do? What do we do about it? There's this prison in New Jersey. Some people have heard me talk about this, called Rahway Prison, which is a kind of remarkable place. And it's remarkable for a group of men who were in that prison. And they called themselves the Lifer Group. You can probably imagine why you might call yourself the Lifer Group. These guys were on life terms. They'd committed really, really serious offences. And they said to the governor of the prison, look, we want to do something positive for our life. We want to give something back. Let us contribute in some way. And they said to the governor, look, we wish someone had told us when we were young how our lives were going to pan out. Let us talk to us as young people. And the governor, who was a very sort of forward-looking, sort of progressive sort of person, said, let's try and do this. And so they worked with local schools, and they worked out who are the children whose lives are starting to go off the wheels a bit. And they got them to come and visit these men, and the men told them their stories. They said, look, this is what went wrong. This is what happened. Don't do what we did. Don't let happen what happened to us. And the children left the prison, and they were interviewed. And they said, that is amazing. That's made a difference. It changed the way I think. And the programme started to spread, and it grew until it was happening in prisons right across the United States. And in an amazing sort of cross-partisan way, it started to be championed by Democrats, and hard to imagine now, right? Democrats and Republicans. Until 50,000, it really grew, 50,000 children a year were going and visiting and listening to stories. And they started to make a film so they could really understand what was going on. And they made a documentary about the programme. And it won an Oscar. It won an Oscar in 1978. You can look it up, Best Documentary. This programme was an amazing thing. And then someone said, look, let's get the proper proof to show the impact it's having. So they did a thing called a trial, a randomised trial, where they got half the children went into the prison and half didn't. And they just followed them up to see what would happen. And they got proper proof to show that the programme made a real difference. Because it did, it had a real impact. It made children 25% more likely to commit acts of violence or crime. 25% more likely. Money was being taken out of people's pockets in taxes to pay for children to be damaged. And what's hard about that story is the people who ran that programme really believed in it. We can hear the story now, and you may have guessed where it was going, but that's because we've heard about the research through some story somehow. They didn't know that. They really believed in what they were doing. The other thing is they really listened to young people. The children said this made a difference. They didn't just ask one, it wasn't token. They didn't just go to meetings and say, hey, we should listen to the voices of young people and children. They actually did listen to the voices of young people and children, and they told them it was great. It wasn't until someone actually did a proper trial that they worked out what was going on. And I have one of the reasons I'm so keen that we're here and wrestling with this word evidence. Evidence is such a bloodless word. It sounds like everything I don't want to get out of bed for. I want to get out of bed to change people's lives, to give people meaning and purpose, to let people flourish. I don't get out of bed for evidence. But here's the thing. We're the adults, and we don't get to say it's okay not to be interested in evidence any more than if you're an oil exec, you don't get to say, I'm not that interested in the evidence about climate change. You don't get to say that. If you're a tech bro or a tech sis, I don't think you should get to say, I'm not interested in the evidence around mental health. And if you believe that part of what you're about is trying to prevent children getting involved in violence, if you believe part of what you're about is keeping children safe, I don't think we get to say we're not really interested in the evidence, even though it's a really boring, bloodless word. Because we're the adults, and we owe it to children to find out how we keep them safe. And sometimes what the evidence says is uncomfortable when it tells us that short-term mentoring programs don't have much evidence behind them. When it tells us that people going in to do assemblies in schools, even if they're talking about their own personal lived experience, there's actually no evidence behind that approach. When it tells us that short-term 2-hour training programs on trauma-informed training may tick your trauma box, but there's no evidence that it actually really helps. That's hard, but we're the adults, aren't we? So we've got to deal with it. But there's one thing to encourage you. There's one thing the evidence, that bloodless word again, is really clear on. Relationships really matter when it comes to children's lives and all of our lives. Relationships really matter. And I think if great youth work is about anything, it's about relationships. That's why I'm so thankful to Al and to Tim and to Sandra. And that's why for all of you in the room who care enough about youth work to be here, that's why I'm incredibly thankful to you. Have a wonderful day. It's great to have you here. Thank you very much indeed.